A very good day to all my listeners all across the globe. Welcome back to my podcast, which is George Nathaniel. And this is George Nathaniel for you. As you'll know, my podcast is all about progress, is all about development, it's all about happiness and wellness in lives. I always keep my podcast very simple. I ensure it relates to our lives. I ensure that there are few learnings or what we do in our lives. I ensure that the experiences that are shared or the subjects that are shared makes a difference in our lives, makes a difference in elevating us to a newer and higher platform across all our goals and achievements. As you'll know, my podcast always comes in a specific topic. And what is the topic of my podcast today? Well, the topic of my podcast today is creative. Learn, develop, and grow. I'm sure everyone would agree that creative is something that we need to do in every moment of our life. So it's a very, very important topic that could relate to all the efforts of our life goals. Well, to begin with, I would say creativity is a skill. It comes with every process, it comes with our involvement, and it comes with our focus in life. So, if we want to be creative, we need to have time in our life. We need to plan a thought process. We need to be positive, and most importantly, we need to challenge ourselves over better outcome. So creativity is an art that takes us to learning, development, and growth in our life. So today, let me ask each one of my listeners, have you ever imagined how creative a life could have got if we were more creative in our efforts? Well, this is a very interesting for each one of us. So when we look at our regular efforts, have we been creative to learn in our regular efforts, or are we just going over our regular efforts? When we look at new efforts over newer challenges, are we being creative enough to develop? And when we look towards our planning in our future efforts, are we looking towards creative in our growth? So these are very simple but very relevant things that will help us all through our lives. So, like I say, when we relate to our personal and professional goals in our lives, we need to understand how much are we engaging in our creative best? Who have we been able to optimize over our creative best? So, whether it's generally or futuristically, it is very important to focus on creative. It's very important to focus on how we can learn, how we can develop, and how we can grow. So what I've done is I've made a list of very few simple takeaways. And I'm sure that as each one sits down and relates to these takeaways in their lives, they would find newer ways how they can elevate their lives. They can find newer ways to give them easier passages to a success in life. So when I look at creative learning, let us understand how much have we grown over our efforts to take bigger challenges on goals. So creative learning is something that we need to pay attention to most importantly, because that applies to our regular efforts, our new efforts, or our future efforts. Creative develop. So creative development is all about how we're developing ourselves over individual skills, or how we are enhancing our skills, or how we are learning and growing. So development is the next step going beyond learning. Creative growth. Well, as we learn and as we develop ourselves, that automatically leads to growth. So creative growth is very, very, I would say, easily achievable in our lives if we actually follow processes of learning, development, and that leads into growth. And it takes a lot of preparedness. It takes a lot of efforts through tough times, through challenging times, and through easier passage times. So these pointers are just more or less very basic pointers because every individual has their own different mindset. Every individual has their own goal sets, and every individual has their own skill that can help them to their creativity. And that is very, very important to understand that every individual has their own goal set, every individual has their own creative, and every individual is an individual in themselves. So it's very, very important for individuals to find their own creative best. It's very, very important for individuals to prepare themselves towards anything in the future. So, to begin with, what we need to do is invest in betterment. And when I say invest on betterment, I say we need to invest on our creative best. So, creative, as we see, or as we actually relate to the podcast for today, it comes down to learning, development, and growth. So, these are pathways that lead us to all our goals in life. Like I always say, and I re say it, all my podcast is all simple and generic. It's something that relates to our day-to-day goals in life. I hope my podcast was interesting. I hope you are able to relate to my podcast. I also have my own blog website which is called georgenathaniel.net. My blogs are totally different from my podcast. I hope you like listening to my podcast today, which was creative, learn, develop, and grow. I wish each one of you all wellness in life. I wish each one of you happiness. I wish each one of you all progress and success in your life. Do be happy, share all the happiness, and make life even more beautiful. Thank you so much. This is George Nathaniel.